We need the land in order to hold on to who we are. The pride, the culture, the history, everything goes together.
We must keep people away whose interest is not the survival of the culture, but whose interest is purely financial.
The will to survive, the story of the Gullah Geechee Nation, is the story of the survival and struggle of a little-known piece of American history. But who are the Gullah and Geechee people? Where do they come from? And why is so little known about them? Join me as we go inside this society that has survived in almost total obscurity for more than 300 years. From the Gullahs of the Carolinas to the Georgia and Florida Geechees, we'll explore the history, the present, and the fight for the future, for what has been called the most authentically African community in the United States.
All there with this mortar and this pestle and thing, when all that spirit been together and walk so.
This African-American woman was born and raised in South Carolina, yet she is speaking in her native tongue. The language is called Gullah, or Geechee, and it is the language and the lifestyle of more than 500,000 African-Americans living along the southeastern seaboard of the United States.
We got taken from West Africa because of our skills in growing rice. Many people desired rice growers, and so Gullah people came as a result of their skills in growing rice.
Emory Campbell was born on Hilton Head Island, where he still lives today.
Gullah, which we spell today G-U-L-L-A-H, was actually from the Gullah people, G-O-L-A, which came from the Rice Coast or Windward Coast region of West Africa, as we once called it, Al-Kebulan. And they were some of the rice cultivators that were brought in to harvest Carolina gold rice.
Marquetta Goodwine, born on St. Helena Island, South Carolina, founded the Gullah Geechee Sea Island Coalition in 1996. In July of 2000, she was elected chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation by a council of elders, and in the African tradition assumed the name Queen Quet.
And then you had from the same region the Geechee people, G-I-D-Z-I, which Geechee, which we spell now G-E-E-C-H-E-E, came out of.
Along with their knowledge of agriculture, the Africans also brought a unique sense of architecture.
Tabby itself is a unique architectural unit to use to build any kind of structure because it's made of oyster shells, lime, and sand and water.
Sapelo, St. Helena Island, and Hilton Head, we consider them Ellis Island because that's where freedom first came. That's where folks had the first opportunity to buy land and live on their own land. That's where people became educated for the first time, had their own schools, and reinforcing their own education from Africa as well as learning new things about a new life.
During the Civil War, many Gullah Geechees bought land. It wasn't all just given to us. And almost everybody I speak to, I can ask them if they ever heard of 40 acres and a mule. And they go, oh, yeah. And I said, well, what is it? And you get all kinds of answers. But normally I don't get the answer, Special Field Order number 15. And Special Field Order Number 15 was issued during the Civil War by a general named William Tecumseh Sherman. And a lot of people know about Sherman's march that came through the South and burnt down everything, but they didn't know about him actually looking around him and going, well, wait a minute, there are thousands and tens of thousands of, as they called us, Negroes at that time here, that were in ragged clothing, that were on all of these plantations, because everything from Jacksonville, North Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, and 30 to 35 miles inland that people called the Gullah Geechee Nation was all plantations. But now we were the only ones on those plantations. So it's like, well, what are we going to do with all of these folks? And so he felt like if all of it, from Charleston and all the abandoned rice fields southward to Fernandina, which is down in Florida, the southernmost tip of the Gullah Geechee Nation, if they could split up the land in 40-acre parcels and issue it to each one of us, then each family would have a place to remain on themselves. Well, that field order got rescinded. And when that happened, there was a lot of turmoil. Those who had the field order issued and land issued and granted, they were fought to get the land back, ran off in some places. But fortunately, many of our ancestors had that mother wit, so they didn't go for somebody giving them something. They went to auctions and they bid on their land and they took ownership of the land. So see, when people come here now to this land that we call the Gullah Geechee Nation, a lot of times they don't ask us what we're doing, how we do it, why we do what we're doing, or anything like that. And so they don't have an understanding of what this land really means to us. And that it's not just about walking around with the sweetgrass basket on your head. It's not just about seeing someone still picking cotton or having their hands blue with indigo, but it's about what is still existing here now. And for us, land is our family, and the waterways are our bloodline. And so a lot of times people will come in and want to buy it from us, and they don't understand that's like asking us to resell our entire family on an auction block all over again. So see, when them the things say, them we done had them all together.
In an effort to communicate with each other, the enslaved people combined the many dialects and customs of their African roots with those of their American captors. What resulted was a hybrid language and culture, which proved to be not only an exclusionary means of communication, but also a critical key to their very survival.
So when that true we are, instead of broke up, join together.
We're Geechees. We're saltwater Geechees.
Cornelia Bailey, author of the autobiographical book God, Dr. Buzzard, and the Bolito Man, is a lifelong resident of Sapelo Island, Georgia.
And we were those fast-talking Geechees, and the people from the mainland said these no-talking saltwater Geechees, we can understand a thing the same because they're speaking too fast.
From island to island, with the Gullah language, you will find variations of that language, just like any other language of the world. And Geechee is just one of the dialects that grew out of the Gullah language, or as linguists would call it, it is a pidgin or a bridge language, because what it does is it still has our same structure, but it has more loan words from English in it than Gullah does.
You know, the origin of the word Geechee was not necessarily a proud connection, because it was actually, it turned into something that became a put down.
Ron Johnson is president of SICARS, Sapelo Island Cultural and Revitalization Society, Incorporated, which sponsors Cultural Day, held annually on Sapelo Island, Georgia.
The slaves that were settled here on these islands had constantly connected with their culture, and they kept the language, and they spoke broken English, and their English didn't develop as fast. When the slave masters would bring slaves with him from the interior, say from Atlanta or someplace, to buy slaves or to visit the plantations down here, and the slaves would interact. Well, you had one slave that was speaking formal English, and another slave was still speaking a real broken language, which became Geechee. Now the guy that spoke formal English would go back to Atlanta and says, "Man, you should hear those Geechees speaking down there."
We listened for the speech, we listened for the words, we listened for huna, which means you. We listened for da, which is the verb form to be, and however that's connected. And we listened for some cultural expression, like, you know, eat the diggy grave, meaning you're eating too much. We listened for the missing THs and the words that when they pronounce teeth or thief.
So if I was saying, look at where are the going right now, look at you, honey, better come here now, for I juke you. Okay, that would be completely in Gullah. Now, if I changed over and I said, well, we are going, boy, you need for come here now, you ain't even want me for juke you any. Okay, then that's more Geechee, because I'm trying to now convey to this person who didn't get it the first time what I actually had to say.
We've got terms that are used almost regularly. Juke is a Gullah word meaning disorderly, and that word is now used to describe a place where we go and dance. We call it a juke joint. But jukebox came out of that same word. We hear the word tote often, tote. We have tote bags, you know, that you find, you buy and it's very expensive, but it's to carry. You tote it on your head, and Africans tote things on their head. When African Americans visit the islands, they're first of all struck by the speech and the accents, and we always have to explain that the accent is nothing more than African accent. They sometimes want to relate it to West Indies, to the West Indies accent, and we usually have to convince them that no, some of us came straight here from Africa, but even the settlers of the West Indies also can relate their language and their accent to West Africa. And so the gee whiz always come from, you know, wow, you talk funny, you sound like an African. And we usually respond and say, we are.
When people come from other parts of the country that doesn't have that connection to the culture as strong as we are, it may be different, but we're all branches from the same culture.
We have our own language. We have our own heritage. We have our own culture. That the rest of what people call African American, that's just a big umbrella over a multiplicity of cultures that are in North America, particularly in the United States. But we're not monolithic as people of African descent. Many of the people who are considered African American today can trace their roots back to the Gullah Geechee Nation, but they no longer hold a legacy because they don't have the language, they don't have the African traditions, they don't know how to work the land or live out of the waterways.
And that's the lesson that people can learn before they go to Africa. They need to visit these islands and hear the accents and get used to the rice dishes too, because there are some rice dishes that are used sometimes now in mainstream America that African Americans don't know where they came from and why they like rice, or why they like sweet potatoes, or why they even like watermelon, although some of us have denied that we do. Those can be traced back to West Africa, the foodways. Growing up on these islands in isolation of other cultures and other people, instilled in us a sense that we know who we are, and we never had to compete with others to give us value. And so our values came straight from our ancestry.
As recently as the 1960s, the Gullah and the Geechee people practiced their religion in the tradition of their ancestors.
We traditionally seeked, and we seek through the woods. We seeked God by going into the woods 3 times a day. Morning, we call it 4-day, which means before daybreak, midday, and evening. And we meditate alone in the thickest woods you can find, fearing nothing, no snakes, fear snakes or mosquitoes or anything, because we found out later that that's what West Africans did. And West Africans went into the woods because they said that's where God is. In some plantations, Christianity was imposed. On some plantations, we found out that some people resisted Christianity.
When the first Baptist minister came this way to organize a Christian church, nobody rushed to join that right away. According to the history at my church, the first African Baptist church that was organized, it started in '65, formally organized in 1866. Only about a dozen people were baptized that first year, so you had literally hundreds of people here. So if everybody wanted to embrace that right away, then it would have been, he would have baptized a lot more in that first time.
Eventually, the slaves combined many of their African religious beliefs and practices with those of Christianity and developed their own way of worship.
I will shout, hallelujah. I will shout, oh Lord. I will shout, hallelujah, oh Lord. For you are the source of my supply.
This is a typical example of a praise house building. This one is active now, but they got started on the plantation, right on the edge of the plantation of doing slavery. People will enter these buildings and they're allowed to worship.
Slave communities used praise as a means of worship and as a means of communicating secret messages to each other.
There were some beautiful sermons preached from the praise house, messages that actually caused people to liberate themselves, and where people would send messages through their sermons.
So now while we're singing and we're shouting, it's providing spiritual covering. It's also providing this covering of sound so that as a person is going out into the wilderness, if some trouble comes up, they shouldn't be able to hear them as easily. If for some reason there's a paddy roller or there's some type of bucker or day out joiner look for one of us to get away, then they won't necessarily hear you either. And so we knew what was going on all the while. But not only in our songs was the code, our very language is that, so that we could always commune with one another and communicate with one another, even in the presence of everybody else.
And so you had your leaders, who are the elders. Most of the time they're older people. The male is always in charge. The women were always the people who set the sounds and set the beat for the sound. And at the end of doing singing, there was no music, so they had to form their own music, their own clap, you know, and that hand beat and the foot stomp.
Lord, I'll praise and lift you high. I will shout, hallelujah, oh Lord.
Jonathan Green is an internationally acclaimed artist. His vibrant paintings, celebrating his Gullah heritage, have been featured in movies, magazines, and museums around the world.
The area was so inspirational for me, but as a child you don't realize how important it is. And it wasn't until I went to the Art Institute, studied the European masters, and then met people from abroad. And one of the people I met encouraged me to come to Switzerland. And I thought, well, it's an opportunity to go abroad. But going to Switzerland, I met the artist, and all of the artists that I met in Switzerland were doing paintings about things they knew. And it seemed for me that their palette was endless. They never had to really think much about what they were painting. And when I returned to the United States, I started looking around and I thought, well, you know, I should be drawing the marsh and landscape and the people. I've been painting basically scenes about my hometown and my environment, and it's just endless. I never have to think of subject matters. I never have to study anything else because it's all readily available. The way of life as we know it is disappearing fast. Not that the population of people are disappearing, but just the importance of the culture. And I feel that so many of the young people today, if they don't have a sense of their culture, then they're not going to have much of a future. Now, my grandmother and mother always said to me that The importance of my life is to paint and to paint about my culture, and so that something will be left behind for people to understand.
Arthur Dilbert is a local woodcarver whose African-inspired designs have won national attention.
Getting into wood carving way back from my child days almost. We used to make certain things to play with. You had to make it, you had to carve it.
The state of Georgia has recognized Dilbert as a master craftsman and has awarded him grants to teach wood carving as a folk art.
I just love to carve. And when I get an idea, I stick with it until I be successful with it. I feel good. I start beat up some old hymn and start singing my hymns and carving, and I'm happy.
Dilbert's intricately detailed walking sticks are among his coveted signature pieces.
It's a great thing. I wish that I could get at least 15 or 20 more to sit down and run off at the mouth and just cut and cut. It's a great thing. It's a peace of mind to sit down and whittle and cut and beat and come out with something that you can see what you have accomplished. My tools should never be forgotten.
Sapelo Island, Georgia, is one of the last remaining intact Geechee communities within the Gullah Geechee Nation. Situated 60 miles south of Savannah, the 4-mile-wide and 10-mile-long barrier island has been described as a 30-minute ferry ride back into Africa and time. The deep emotional connection between the Gullah and Geechee people and the land is eloquently expressed in this excerpted piece by Sapelo Island resident Cornelia Bailey.
I am Sapelo. And all the hundreds of others who are descendants. We who remain here is Sapelo.
To us, this was heaven. People come often and ask me, they said, when you was growing up, what did you miss as a child? And I said, nothing.
I never lost my love for Sapelo Island. Just the culture, the beaches, the peace and tranquility, the vegetation. I look forward to it every day.
I started doing tours because I was riding with my mother. She was doing tours. I learned different things every time I tell a tour. I learned a different thing that I didn't know before. So the tour after them, they get more information because the more I do it, the more I learn. This blue building over here on the left that you see was an old school building that was used for kids in the community. It's no longer used for a school anymore because it was destroyed by the hurricane. So now it's used for a computer lab and a library.
We are one, bound by the spirit of an island.
The pine tree is doing well. It's producing cones, and its lifeblood is coming from the oak.
And Balali the slave, bound by high tide, fields, gossips, smoke mullet, and our faith.
Sapelo is a prototype sea island, the prototype of what these other islands were like. St. Helena Island, Hilton Head Island, Dafusky Island. Before the advent of resort development on these other islands were similarly situated as Sapelo is. where people were still using those basic cultural assets that we brought from West Africa, where people maintained self-sufficiency and also promoted self-sufficiency.
Careful, hold tight now. I ain't got no brakes out. Hold tight.
So where are we going?
To the beach.
What's that?
To the beach. Indigo Beach.
George Walker is on his way to get dinner, the same way his ancestors have been getting dinner for generations.
When you go to Sapelo and see people fishing with the fish nets and casting the fish nets and fishing on the beach, you're looking at West Africa, and even in today's world.
Look here. There's a log right there. See a log yonder? Yeah. Go right alongside that log. And I want you to go forward as you could. I'll give you a hand in a minute. Okay, we walk. Darryl, come here. You hold this pole. Keep the pole straight. Don't let it drag the bottom. Just keep off the bottom like that. And help him push, and he pull.
How far you going up?
Before you can go. I'll be in a minute, give you a hand.
The people of Sapelo live by a spiritual code that has enabled them to survive against the odds. They have a deep and abiding respect for nature and an understanding of their relationship to it. With harmony as their guiding philosophy, the Gullah and Geechee people believe that in nature nothing is wasted, nothing is exploited, and nothing is abused.
Big shark right there.
A shark?
Yeah.
Where?
In that net?
In the net?
Yeah, I'm throwing that in there. Right now, it's good fishing now, summertime. We fish every time the tide is right. One thing I love living on here, you get fresh seafood that you can't get. And on the market, you got like a pocket full of money. You can come out here and get fresh seafood for nothing.
Our existence here on Sapelo starts in the connection from the slave families that were brought to this area. The most famous and documented slave that's in Georgia history that I know of and we're proud of is Gullah Muhammad. Gullah Muhammad was a very famous slave because he spoke many languages. He spoke and wrote in Arabic and English and 5 different languages. He had 8 daughters and over 12 sons. The sons were naturally from that time sold as slaves to other slave families, but most of the daughters were kept here. We have over 44 families that have came from those 8 daughters of Gullah Muhammad.
The ability to adapt is what defines the genesis of the Gullah Geechee culture. But what about its future? Since the 1960s, more and more developers are moving in and claiming the shoreline. Exclusive resorts and high-priced condominiums, as seen on Hilton Head, are trumpeting in a new and imposing future for the nation.
Well, we've survived because we had to. You see these survival shows on television nowadays, and I often chuckle when I watch them because I lived it. Everybody had responsibility. And that responsibility was shared responsibility because we've got an influx now of a different kind of culture that is relying on more things than on self and people. That is causing some strife among Gullah people.
So we must keep people away whose interest is not the survival of the culture, but whose interest is purely financial.
We're trying to hold on to what we got because if the land goes, so does the people. I mean, I cannot function in the middle of Brooklyn doing the same thing I'm doing down here.
Most of us still have our deeds, and today we have to fight issues in court under situations that we call heirs property, because we got the paper, well, be sure who we been. And so we are still the heirs to this land, and this is our legacy. This is our family. Their blood, their bones, their sweat, the placenta, even from the babies that were birthed here, is in this soil. And so for someone to just want to buy it or tell us, well, you could live somewhere else. But you're right, we could live somewhere else, but what quality of life would we have?
You take away the land, you take away the culture, you take away the history, and it's not going to work. So hence goes everything. So we need the land in order to hold on to who we are, the pride, the culture, the history, and everything goes together.
Land value is going up, and people are using it now as a commodity because cash is needed. And we have less time now with our family, because everybody is out trying to get enough cash to get the things we want instead of what we need.
We must have control of what occur in the community.
Several efforts to preserve the Gullah Geechee culture are being made both individually.
This is a tradition that came from Africa, because they used to make these baskets, much bigger baskets for working in the fields and taking stuff to the market. When my son was in high school and my daughter both was in high school, and they like to go buy those $70, $80 pair of shoes, make a basket to buy your shoes. and also I want them to learn how to do this also.
And collectively, organizations like SICARS on Sapelo Island and the South Carolina Coastal Community Development Corporation on St. Helena Island are just two such organizations.
Well, I think part of what we do is we look at the culture of food in the community. We look at how we can come together as a community and help more people create businesses around food and come up with a central label that will represent the Gullah Geechee Nation and use that as a marketing niche.
We practice working with the baskets. We still cast nets. We still build boats and the things that the early slaves brought to this country, the same traditions and things we did to survive then. We still practice those things as part of a way of life here on the island.
Take everything old and make it new again. My thing is you have to go back in order to go forward. So we have to take all the resources from our generations back and then bring it forward and make it an economic base. So what we need to do is take everything that we learned, syrup making, drying fish, making cast net by hand, making rowboats, making toys for our children, the way we cook. Those are the things that we introduce to the outside world and make a living from it. And so we're still holding on to your integrity, your pride, your history, your culture, and you're making some money and you can stay.
There's still some semblance of that value here in these islands because people still have that kinship and they have the respect of the elders. And as long as the elders can continuously gain that respect and maintain that respect, we'll probably have the semblance of survival still.
The fate of the Gullah Geechee Nation is still unknown. But what is known is that the history and contributions of this culture provide a living link to the past.
When all that spirit been together and walk so, it be just dry long so. See, they been together so this year day would have come. And we would have owned all of this year. Where we would have lived together once again. Ain't been gonna be no more Madaba daddy or nothing but man, nothing like that. Cause this year.
So I'm gonna ask God to let me live 100 years. My friend said, you are 100? She said, yes. So she went to bed that night, she got ready to bed, she got up and she said, I'm praying, she asked God to let her live. We have people that live other places and they can't wait to come back home. As soon as they come back home, for instance, they take off their shoes, they want to go clamming, they want to go fishing, they want some peas and rice, they want some smoked mullet. So even though they're in the city, as soon as they come back, it reverts. And we don't want to lose that. And they know that they come back, there's land for them to put their feet on that belongs to them.
I think there are lessons here. There are lessons where people valued family, and kinship, as well as caring about one another. And that was necessary because of the fact that we were isolated and we had to rely on what we knew, traditions from West Africa, customs from West Africa, even foodways. And we passed that along, and we shared that with whomever needed it. And so we met the needs together. That's one lesson. Secondly, the lesson of economic development, maintain land ownership, produce their own foods, produced all of the things that they needed for life, how we use it together in terms of cooperatively together. Nobody owned the land, people shared land. And the new economy has caused us to change that, but most of the time, land was used as people needed it. I think the other lesson is education, how we learn, and who we learn from. Everybody who can teach taught, and everybody tried to learn what they needed to learn in order to make progress.
To lose this culture would be to lose a piece of American history, and as many believe, to dishonor a people for a second time.
So even now, when people come into the Gullah Geechee Nation and they try to figure out how come we seem like we're so joyful, how come we seem like we're so happy all the time, and they're like, oh, y'all still sing all them old songs. Well, those old songs are new songs in our soul and in our spirit, because they always do the same thing they did for our ancestors who created the spirituals that are now South Carolina state music. They help to revive you. They help to keep you in that continuum, because nothing is about just this moment. Everything is about what happened before and what is coming in the future. Even now, the Gullah Geechee Nation tree is bodies intertwined, because we know we can never survive without that interconnection. We are that fruit that grows off that tree. So if we know the roots are ailing and we want more fruit in the future, then we have to dig into the past. We have to know our story. And who better to tell our own story than our own people? And so that we know through all the work that we're doing who we da down ya, and we know we da dear ya, we da been ya, and we ain't a going nowhere.
This road has not been easy, forged from shame. We fight to hold on to from whence we came, stretching a lifetime, first free, then a slave. And let's not forget, the longest road yet is the one to our ancestors' grave. We've been through the valleys, but now we're on high ground, reaching for eternity. And we will not come down. We faced a lot of troubles, and the fire's still alive. Oh, against all odds, we'll make it with the will to survive. On going in the ways that we know, standing strong and holding on, can't let my people go. No, we won't ever stop trying to keep our roots alive. Oh, and plant anew the pride that grew from a will to survive. With the wheel